Services, a fairly advanced program on collaborative practice, saving the golden goose, helping family-run businesses survive divorce. All right, so businesses, collaborative practice, Carrie, why CP?
Why? The bigger question is why not? Honestly, the best part about doing collaborative when you have a family-owned business is the fact that we are not in court, and which means that we have privacy. And if you are a business owner, one of the things you cherish most is the privacy of the inner workings of your company. So the thing that I love the best is that none of that gets shared. It's not on public record. And your competitors can't find out anything about your business. It is a nice, safe space for people to talk about that business, and we can get creative on how we keep that business thriving through the process and beyond, and we keep everybody happy as they move forward into their next chapters. That's the biggest why.
And privacy from your competition too, right? You don't want your competition seeing your financial statement in court, knowing how much inventory you have, what kind of state your company might be in. We're going to do a deep dive into all these issues. You want to add anything to this slide, Jarret, before we talk about what collaborative offers?
No, yeah, I'll jump in talking about what collaborative offers, but I think Carrie put that well. Yeah, that's huge.
All right. And the other thing we want to be mindful of, and this often gets overlooked, for the business owner, divorce is very distracting, right? Going to court's like having a cloud over your head, and you got to get all this information, and you're taking your focus off the business. And often businesses flounder when the owners go through a divorce. They're not focusing on the day-to-day business. They're upset, they're distracted, it drains funds from the business. But certainly in terms of collaborating offers, privacy, Carrie mentioned a little bit about that, tax planning and corporate share structures. I'm going to take a dive into that, flexible payment structures, and increased corporate health and protecting income. Oftentimes these family-run businesses are generational businesses. They may have adult children working in the business. Usually the spouses on the payroll is income splitting. So this is the golden goose, right? We want to use collaborative to keep this goose healthy so it can continue to generate incomes for generations to come. But unknown knowns, right? This is we don't really think about this when we're helping clients, especially with businesses, but unknown knowns, Jarret, what would we be thinking about?
I think from the lawyer perspective, if we had a dime every time the client comes in and says, oh, I own the business, that's my business. And then when we start to peel back the layers of the onion, we realize that maybe the other spouse is a director, or maybe treasurer, or maybe there's a share differentiation in the business, or signing authority, or maybe there's a loan we don't know about, shareholders loan associated with the business. There's so much to unpack when it comes to these businesses, and I think you hit the nail on the head, Russ, when you talked about time. Dealing with these golden goose businesses in the collaborative process allows us to be flexible and take our time. Time is something the court doesn't have for us. So to be able to delve into the nitty gritty of the business and how, I just had a client in a couple of days ago, actually had no idea that his ex-wife was a director of his business, had been working with him for several weeks. And some of these mom and pop businesses that get started 20, 30, 40 years ago, they don't even know anymore. Their accountants are dealing with all that, or, sometimes they're out of touch with how the business is actually operating or how it's structured. So very important to look into the inner workings of the business itself. A lot of clients, when you first ask them, aren't even sure when it was incorporated and who owns what shares. So just starting out from there and unpacking these unknowns is incredibly important, because it may have huge impact on settlement, right? Some of these unknowns in terms of how we structure the language, how we structure how the shares are dealt with, how we structure who's going to continue operating the business. Unpacking those unknowns in the collaborative process, especially with an extended team, is vitally important. And it's something the court just doesn't have the resources to deal with right now.
Yeah, the other thing, I'm just sort of making notes that as we're talking, we've had cases where the parties didn't even know what the share structures of the corporations were, where there were holding companies with companies owning other companies, and risk of CRA audits if there was a valuation or share structure, which would create a huge tax liability for the family. Also, if you're in court, court doesn't have a lot of options. It might be a fire sale, or the court will order the sale of the company if the family can't agree. And that happened recently with a very large company that the court just said, we're just selling it. You guys can't agree on how you're going to divide this up. We're going to order the sale at a huge discount. The big disadvantage to the family, there was no tax planning or tax savings or tax initiatives. It was just a fire sale. So that's another unknown known. Do you want to add to some of these unknown knowns? I'm thinking of, McNamara in that documentary, The Fog of War. They're going into Vietnam, and there's so many things they didn't know about going in. It's sort of like the fog of divorce court, right? You're going into this thing, and there's all these landmines and pitfalls that, as a business owner or a family that has a business, you don't know if the business is going to survive this process. Most of them don't. But do you want to add to this, Carrie?
Yeah, one of the things that I enjoy about when family businesses and collaboratives is this idea is that we can ask certain questions. And so often we have the business owner going, we didn't consider that. We didn't think about that. Especially when it comes to, maybe they have adult children that are working in the business. They have other business partners, and they really didn't think about, what does this mean for everybody else? Especially when we have those families and we're saying, well, what's the succession plan? And they're saying, well, we haven't done succession planning. And now all of a sudden they're going, oh, this is something we actually have to take seriously. And then we can talk about, so maybe they've done some succession planning. We start asking them about, your son's in the business and their family. What happens if all of a sudden they go through a separation or divorce? Oh, well, we didn't think about that either. So it's an opportunity for not only for us to really get into some good information, but it allows our business owners to just turn around and say, you know what? We need to do some real planning. We've got some holes in our own family life. Aside from us going through this separation and divorce, we've got a whole roundup of other things that we've got to talk about. And this is when, and I know later on we talk about this, is when we got to bring a few other professionals into this. It's not as simple as just saying it's us as a core team. We got to look at a whole lot of other things as well.
Another one, what about new partners and their claims to the business potentially, right? There's so many things that you just are not thinking about when you have a client with a business owner that you want to be really mindful of. But that's what we're going to talk about today. That's what we're going to help you with. So Carrie, what kind of service can they expect?
Well, as you guys know, my favorite thing about collaborative is this concierge service options that we provide. We can talk about how is this family and this business better served by perhaps we need to establish family trusts, we need to establish holding companies, maybe we need somebody to actually have a whole new company so that we can do some shares and some share and financial transfers that we can do on a tax saving basis. And one of the biggest thing, I don't know about anybody else, but I don't enjoy paying the CRA. Other people may really like them. I don't. And so tax planning, avoiding audits, if anybody has ever been audited, the massive stress that goes in behind that. We want to see where we can avoid things. We want to be doing firefighting. We want to do that fire prevention. We don't want to be going in there going, oh my gosh, this whole new thing has crept up and now we need to do something else with it. So we want to really be cognizant of, hey, what does it mean for CRA purposes if all of a sudden this family's going through separation, divorce? What does that look like? What does that mean? Where are some of the benefits that we can get? Where can we apply those? So capital gains is one of the biggest one that we talk about. The other thing that we do want to look at is the employment, and I touched on this already, of spouses and children, that succession planning, and then their succession planning that goes in behind that. Is there also a time in which the spouses had already planned on wrapping this business up? Or was it going all the way over to one child? How have those plans changed? And what does that mean for us? And it goes in again with that estate succession and capacity planning. If there was plans in the works to growing the business, are those plans still there? And if they are, how do we work at that? How do we mitigate the risk for the person that's no longer going to be in the corporation? And what happens if they decide, I don't want to be with you, but I still want to work in this business? How do we make that work?
Mhm.
So these are some things that we have to be aware of when somebody has a family-owned business.
All right, so let's go to our audience and see what everybody's thinking, and we'll do our next poll question. Can the collaborative process work where the court process is failing to meet the client's needs? So let's see what our audience thinks. I just got an update. We did get another donation in from Shannon, so thank you so much, Shannon, for your donation to the Abrigo Center. And give everybody just a few moments. Also, please keep sending us your questions. We're going to have some time for Q&A at the end. We're going to answer as many questions as we can throughout this program, including questions during the polls. So if you have any questions, please put them in the box. Okay, so let's see what our audience is saying. 60% said yes. And then there's our favorite answer, 38% depend. So the others, throw your others in the chat box. Let's see what you guys think. But next we're going to talk about additions to the team. So Carrie and Jarret kind of led into this. We want, in my view, if you have a family-run business, a full team, financial professional, family professional, and you want to consider whether you want an XL team, right? So a case that Jarret and I were involved in, very wealthy family, very successful businesses. And what we realized was we're going to need to do, the wife wanted out, but and want nothing to do with the business. She was a director. There's adult children in the company, but didn't want the kids involved either. And the husband was a hugely successful business operator, and everybody recognized that, including the wife. So the way we structured this particular case, the wife was going to get a large capital payment to enable her to get her own home and get set up, and would continue to benefit from the business. She wouldn't be a director, but she would own it, pull out the funds, personal expenses. And we had to think, okay, well, when this winds up, what are we going to need to do? Or one of the parties dies. So we needed a corporate lawyer to give us the exact language we needed for the separation agreement. And then there was tax issues, right? With respect to existing tax issues and future taxes and capital gains. So we needed a tax expert to give us that advice. Now, Jarret and I are just family lawyers. We know this stuff, but not that well, that we want to put our liability insurance on the line. And then we thought, well, what about new partners? And so we needed, an estate and legacy, and we needed domestic contracts for the new partner, and they needed to put on notice if they're going to get cohabitated or remarried. So these are just, we're going to get into this example in more detail. This is just one example of how one family with a business needed a full team and an expanded team of additional experts. And what Jarret and I did in that particular case, we had a meeting. We thought we had the agreement done, but we had what we called an issue identification meeting with the full professional team, where we went through the draft agreement, and then the other experts started noticing these blind spots and these gaps that we needed to fill in to get them a complete agreement that was going to survive any legacy issues, any issues if somebody dies or there's new partners, there's issues with CRA, issues with the adult children. So really it was a full service concierge service that Carrie's talking about. We had professionals helping us identify blind spots. And Jarret and I had the benefit of these people identifying areas of our draft final agreement that that needed help. So do you want to comment a little bit on that case, Jarret?
Yeah, just a couple added points to that. That's a great recollection, Russ. I think a couple takeaways. Don't be afraid to bring in these extended members of the team. We actually had the corporate lawyer attend a physical group meeting. We had the accountants calling in. So it wasn't like the lawyers were just going away and sending an email to these people. We were actually involving them in the process. So everyone was hearing the same information, the same opinions coming from their mouths at the same time. I thought that was a huge benefit to the team there. The other thing is that the key to that file was, like a lot of these family businesses, the spouse that wasn't really involved wanted the Golden Goose to be preserved. She wanted the business to survive for the intergenerational benefits to her children. She didn't want to be in charge of running it. So she actually resigned as a director, but we built language into their agreement that she'd still have transparency. She'd still be able to check in. The husband was still giving quarterly reports to the spouse. So she had that level of oversight to make sure the Golden Goose was going to be preserved for her kids. And I think that's really what brought that file together. And because the alternative, and I think we used this with the husband client, was if you guys go to court, there's a good chance everything's getting sold and this business is going to get valued, which may trigger a CRA audit. So there was a ton of benefits to working within that extended team on that file. And Carrie might want to comment further on that.
And I remember during one of our meetings, the Goose was a lot bigger than we thought because the business owner had a napkin and wrote down some information, handed it to Jarret and goes, "Oh yeah, we got these 3 other companies that I haven't told you about." It's like,
money in the
okay,
Caymans.
that's great. What was that?
Money in the Caymans.
Yeah, exactly. So the Goose kept on getting bigger, as were the issues, as were the blind spots, as was the need to get these other professionals involved. But the financial professional, Carrie, let's walk us through this slide. What does our audience need to know?
Oh, I'm going to walk you through this. So one of the things that I do want to point out is one of the things that I know as professionals and professional teams, the very first thing that most people think of when they hear we're going to do an extended team, we're going to have a corporate lawyer, tax, and all of this sort of stuff, they go, "Oh my God, the costs for these families, to bring in all these other professionals." And I appreciate that, with this one caveat, is that what is this cost to this family if this business doesn't survive by not bringing in those other professionals? The cost is far greater to this destruction of the business rather than making sure that our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed. So I always want everybody to understand there's cost and then there's value. So let's be mindful of the value and not just the cost of some of the things that we're doing here. So that's a big part of it. Yeah. Your financial professional that's coming in on the file, they're going to be a major person that's going to be identifying some of these issues. So it's going to be looking at, hey, listen, this is a complex financial situation in which we have the businesses. So bringing in that neutrality, that being able to say to both legal counsel going, hey, this is where this company is looking, here's all of the arms that go in it. It's a good thing having that neutral sitting there saying these things, because they're the ones going to be bringing up a lot of the issues. And if a legal counsel's doing it, they're going to think, oh, well, they just want to get as much as they can out of the business, or they want to destroy the business. So you start breaking trust rather than building trust. So neutrality is your best friend when it comes to dealing with family and family businesses. It's about building up that trust. We are a massive advisor and we're an educator. So what's going to end up happening is that I'm educating, if I'm on the file, I'm educating the lawyers as to why we may need to involve their accountants, their financial professional that they have that deals with them on a normal basis, their advisors. I'm going to be saying, we need this and here's why we need that. So it's a big part of the component. Obviously, we are the centralized area in which every piece of disclosure information is going to be coming into. We are going to be the very first person that sees the actual structure of the business or businesses. And it's very important that you know your structure of the business you're dealing with. If somebody's a sole proprietor versus somebody that has a multi-million-dollar corporation, those are two very different businesses, and you need to be able to identify that fast. My favorite is management of expectations. Sometimes we'll have people that have an expectation as, I'll just take my half of the business and I'll go running along my way. We need to manage those expectations in conjunction with legal counsel. We need to make sure everybody's understanding what are the ramifications if this business gets sold, if it gets done piecemeal, and what are the problems that arise when we have other business owners involved. Sometimes your partner in a business isn't a family member, it's not your spouse. So we want to be able to manage those expectations. We're always obviously looking at the finances as they evolve, as we get more information, as we get the cocktail napkin coming and going, by the way, here.
And we have a case study on the not so silent partner we're going to get to a little bit later, right, Carrie?
Absolutely, and I have to admit that's the one that was running through my head.
Business partner, not spouse partner.
Right, and it's a big difference. And of course, we're going to be running those reports and we're going to be creating documentation as we go along the way. Your financial person is kind of your quarterback as they're passing the ball and saying, hey, it needs to go here. We're running a play. We got to make sure everybody is on the field and willing to play. So that's the big role of the financial professional. It's a big one.
All right, Jarret, I know we're really imposing on your time today. I really appreciate you doing our presentation. Family professional, help our audience out here. What do we want to be mindful of?
Do not make the mistake of underestimating how important a family professional is on these family business files. You don't kid yourselves. These financial decisions are massively emotional based. Especially the mom and pop shops that have been running for 20, 30 years, right? These are, or the companies with kids actively involved with operating the business. So a lot of dynamics going on behind the scenes here. The kids wanting to know what got discussed at the last collaborative meeting, what's going on. Mom says this, dad says this. So think of the Rogers family fights going on when you're working on these family files. They're very emotional based. So having that full team and having the family professional involved is massively important. Russ mentioned
that Rogers case sounded just like Succession, right? And they're tweeting each other. I couldn't believe how nasty it got.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And so keep that in mind. Keep that Rogers case in mind when you're working. Maybe the family business files you're working on aren't quite as big as the Rogers file, but keep that in mind. This has been their lifeblood. This family business has probably fed their children for the last, decade. So assessing where each spouse is at and maybe letting go of the family business or dividing it up or transferring shares back or other people coming in and working like new partners and what their interests and competing interests are. The family professional is going to work behind the scenes to the professional team's benefit on making sure that they're ready for meetings. They understand what's happening. The case example we keep talking about, the family professional was integral in making sure the wife understood that even though she was resigning from the business, she was still going to be involved. She was still going to get that oversight and that transparency in getting that financial result in that file. Hugely important was the work that the family professional did behind the scenes and again, a lot of these family businesses, we might as well be speaking another language to the clients when we're talking about some of these tax components or some of these restructuring things. The family professional is going to help use layman's terms. They're going to help take the time aside from maybe the group meeting and make sure that both clients or all the clients understand what's really happening and what these tax concepts mean and what this means in practical circumstance. So hugely important, and I think having a family professional is a must on these family business files. On that, I have to run. Thank you so much as always for having me, Russ, and take care. Carrie, it was a pleasure. Good luck.
Thank you, Jarret.
Say hi to whatever case management judge you're appearing before.
I will.
We're going to press on to one. So let's talk about the business valuator. So oftentimes it depends on the business, right? You may have somebody with a van full of tools, a plumber or electrician. It may not be worth spending $10,000 or $15,000 to value a $30,000 tool set. So you want to be mindful of, what is the asset that you're valuing? Maybe it's a service provider, and if that person wasn't able to work, there'd be no business. Or maybe it's a business with a lot of inventory. It depends on the asset, but really important role, especially when you're dealing with family-run businesses. Educating the clients on the process, preparing rent reports, maybe a business valuation or an income assessment. Oftentimes, these small businesses or medium-sized businesses will report $25,000 or $30,000 to CRA. Meanwhile, they're really making $100,000 or $200,000 when you add in the personal expenses. So you may want to consider an income assessment as well. Oral reports and verbal communications. Sometimes you may only need an oral report from a business valuator. For them to give you a written report requires them a lot more work, a lot more effort on their part, a lot more due diligence. They might initially in the CP setting, they may want to just provide an initial oral report saying, here's what I see with respect to this business. Here's the value of doing a formal written report. Here's the value of doing a forensic audit. Here's what a more detailed oral report would look like. And each one of these comes with an associated cost. So that way you're managing your client's expectations. And in the case that I was involved in with the teacher who got charged, very little trust. But we were able to get the expert to give us oral reports throughout the process. That helped build credibility. And that also helped in the end result. We're not just presenting a written report to the CP team as an all or nothing thing, and now somebody's got to process the number. The numbers we're developing throughout the course of the file as the expert was doing more work, addressing concerns, also build up a lot of trust and credibility through that process. Big picture review. They can give you an initial big picture review of a likely value, and then you can get instructions from the team in terms of what type of expert report is going to be required. Investigate on specific issues. So again, back to my teacher example, no trust, just finished a criminal trial, business with a lot of cash sales, a business owner running a lot of personal expenses through the business. So that particular expert was able to look at the cash sales, look at the personal expenses. The wife gave a list of everything they ran through the business when they were a married couple. See if those expenses are showing up in the business. Add that back in as income. So now we're adding $100,000 in income to the business owner and gross it up. So that's going to improve her support claim. And so those specific issues were addressed, which enabled the wife to get over her anger and hurt to come to a settlement in the collaborative setting. And as Carrie mentioned, oftentimes, and Jarret mentioned this too, these experts, including the business evaluator, will either attend in person or by phone during the CP meeting. Now, maybe the CP meeting has been 3 hours and we're going to deal with family property issues or parenting issues. Maybe the expert only needs to be in a 30-minute portion of that meeting and can call in to deal with the valuation issues, which is a very efficient way to do it. Or it could be done by Zoom as well. That particular case was pre-pandemic, back when we all would meet in person. They can also assist with option generation. So when you're looking at equalization claims, and a lot of business owners have covenants with the bank with respect to their capitalization and capital gains issues and other issues. So they might not be able to pull $500,000 out of the business to make an equalization payment because it may breach their loan agreement with the financing institution that's financing their line of credit. But the business valuator can generate options around that. How can we come up with options that's going to satisfy everybody's goals and interests? So a really important role to play during for families with family-run businesses or other businesses to maintain this golden goose that we're talking about. Range of options in terms of the type of reports you're going to get, the participation the expert's going to do, the expenses the family can be expected to with when they engage a business valuator. And it really helps the professionals manage the client's expectations and focus them on their goals and interests. We'd recommend it. Maybe it's just going to be initial oral report. Depends on the business. Again, if you're just dealing with smaller items, a smaller business, the expense may not be worth it. But if you're dealing with a business with significant assets and significant income, definitely would be the course to go. So what do you say about the business valuators? You work pretty much hand in hand as the financial neutral with these people, right, Carrie?
Yeah, I do. And it all starts with you knowing what type of structure this business is. So you just touch on it. A sole proprietor is the business. Most likely we're not going to get a business valuation done. We might get an income determination, but not a formal business valuation done. The higher the complexity of the business, the more likely we are to have that business valuator in, and it'll change the type of report that we want. Now, one of the wonderful things that has come out of Zoom meetings, and we've had this on numerous files where we have our business valuator coming in to give us a report, and it's an oral report, and we will ask the business valuator at the beginning of the meeting, can we record the meeting so that we can go back and re-listen to what's happening? Or we'll ask them if we can record the meeting on something called Otter. And Otter is a transcription service. It's great. It works really, really well. You can get a free version of it as well as a paid. And we'll ask them, can we record this either through Otter or on Zoom? So far, I've never had a CB tell me no. They've always said yes, but it clarifies questions because usually after the oral report's going, you're like going, I don't remember what they said, what happened with this, where is that? It cuts down on costs, everything is there. It allows people then to go through and make a list of the questions that they have for their business valuator, and it wraps the matter up quicker. A lot of times though, what we're doing is we're having clients will turn around and say, you know what, that was really helpful, but I think I really want the written report now. I really want that written report, and it's easier for the business valuator to do. And somebody had asked, we like this to be a shared cost, and normally your financial neutral will recommend business valuators that are appropriate to the type of business. A farming business valuator is different than somebody is going to say evaluate a services business. So we want to make sure we're getting the right valuator doing the right job.
All right, so let's go back to our audience. We've been speaking for quite some time, but let's see what our audience thinks. And again, please put your questions into the Q&A and into the chat box. But our next poll question, do you have collaborative practice training? So this is a fairly advanced subject. Brian did a great job this morning talking about getting collaborative files. And provided some great examples, Brian, Michelle, and Carolyn Warner. Fantastic presentation. But let's not assume everybody in here has CP training because it's open to a wide variety of professions. And can you talk about CP training? We have one coming up. We're offering it by Zoom, right, Carrie?
We're offering it by Zoom, and it is starting on November the 13th afternoons, so you can be doing a lot of work in the mornings, but it starts there. I believe Shannon is going to provide everybody with our website. It is cptraining.ca, and registration is still open. We do have a couple of spots still available.
Right, and how many sessions is it?
So it is over a 4-week period, which sounds like a lot, but it's only 2 afternoons per week. That's it. We have a few breaks. Also, so people that also know is that if you can't make a session, let us know. We'll record the session for you. We'll send it to you so you don't miss anything and you can be up to date.
So pre-pandemic, it would be in person for 4 or 5 days. So you'd have to do part 1 and part 2. So you'd be blowing off a week, but this is by Zoom, so you can be at work or at home. You still work in the morning, still run your practice, and the commitment is 2 days a week for 4 weeks. Carrie?
2 afternoons a week for 4 weeks.
Okay. And I asked Brian, he's leading this. Jonathan Painter presented yesterday. He's the trainer. Carrie's presenting. I'm going to be helping out as well. We can offer a 10% discount if you sign up today. Like Carrie said, we have 1 or 2 spots left, but the class is almost full. But let's go back to our poll and see what our audience has to say about training. 26% said yes, 59% said no. Well, you're in the right spot if you want to get some training or learn how to get training. Don't know, how do I get the training? Well, Carrie just explained that right now. When's the next training? It's next Monday? 2 months.
The 13th it starts.
Yeah, it's coming up quick, right?
Yeah, very quick.
You can get in the 13th, but there'll be another one in the future. We're not sure of those dates yet. So thank you again for participating in our poll. Okay, let's go to our next slide. What do we got next? You want to talk about this one, Carrie?
All right, private settlement benefits. I love this because in private settlement, as you guys know, we get to be creative and we get to do what's right for this family. And I think you guys heard earlier where Russ was saying, you know, a judge can just order this business to be sold, but I really never understood why that's a benefit to anybody in the family. So one of the things about this is that this family run business, so somebody can stay remaining an owner like we had on our other file. They're at an arm's length, they're still getting reports, they know what's happening, they're still getting the benefits of being an owner of that business as it grows. It is still providing for the lifestyle of the family. It is another reason why we don't want to kill this business. We need it there. It is supporting everyone, the person working in the business, the entire family, and a lot of times it's the extended family that's also benefiting. So we want to keep that out. We want to make sure that we can keep that alive for everyone. Traditional litigation, it is going to take a lot of time and a lot of money. The pandemic did not help us at all when it comes to being timely within the courts. It wasn't great before, it's a whole lot worse now. I think it's maybe gotten an inch better, not a whole lot after that, but this is a wonderful way of doing things. The family financial resources can be depleted very quickly when you are in traditional litigation. What we want to do is we want to help the family so that we cannot deplete the resources. One of the things that we're going to be looking at, are there covenants that have to be followed for the bank? Are there some dollar values that have to stay within the corporation that can't be shared? And this also helps us with income determinations and values of the business. What are the things that they have coming up? How is this business evolving? One of the things that we've seen over the last 10 years, especially, print businesses are not what they were 10 years ago or what they were 20 years ago. We are such a digital media now that kind of thing we want to look at. Is this business going to survive? Or when the client says, our business is taking a downturn and here's why, we can look at that and we can help them preserve precious resources. And also the other things we want to do is we want to make sure that we are mitigating any of the risks that we are putting this business in. Somebody running their own business, even though they may not be concentrating on what's happening in their private life all the time because they're in their business, it is always in the back of their mind. It never goes away. They may decide, I'm going to put off doing an expansion. I'm going to put off maybe laying somebody off, or I'm going to start laying people off. Their way they run their business is extremely different while they are in this process than when they are out of this process. So we want to make sure that we can give the owners of the business and the families so that there's good effort and that there's also good focus We want to make sure that we're not having people just going, well, that's it, I'm just going to sell everything. We don't want crash and burn. We want to say, hey, how do we make sure that this is lucrative for everyone involved and making sure that you're moving forward? Remember, our goal is to make sure our families are in a good position after we're done with them. We don't want to be destroying anything about them. My other favorite, this is not part of public record. Isn't that great? Nice privacy for this family. They don't need to have their competitors going, hey, you know, Bob's business he's going through a divorce. Let's go down to the courthouse. Let's take our credit card and get every ounce of information we can about our competitors, and we can take them out at the knees. We're not going to do that. We're in a private way of doing things, which is fantastic. And we're also mitigating any CRA audits. Sometimes when this becomes public record, the CRA goes, I want to look at that a little bit closer, that business. We want to see wherever we can stay away from the mean and nasty, we're going to try and steer clear from that. And we want to make sure that we're doing the best service to keep this family and this business moving forward and being lucrative. This isn't about decimation of funds. This is about continuing to build the wealth.
And just to talk about your first 2 points, also the family business can be their identity as well, right? This is who they are, and you're losing that identity if you lose the family business. And to go back to that teacher getting charged example, I took that case over when it was in court, and we're in the provincial court. I have no idea why it was in the provincial court. That's where it started before I got involved. And all I was thinking is, why don't we kick this up to the Superior Court? We got a car dealership, we got lots of assets, big houses, lots of income. And I was at that time a little bit overconfident in terms of what the wife's claims were. We had a great children's lawyer helping us. So we got the parenting issues resolved in family court, got the final order. Then I asked the lawyer if he wanted to do it collaboratively, even though I was really optimistic my client was going to be successful in her claims. And he said, sure. So we brought it into the setting, brought in a business valuator. As it turned out, my client had taken over the car dealership from his father and notionally and created a trust in the fact he was operating the business, there's no doubt. But the business ownership was never transferred over. So there was a legal question, a couple legal questions. What was the date of marriage deduction for his notional interest in this business? And secondly, did he even own this business, right? There was an argument that his father still owned the business. I didn't know this when I was in court, but I discovered this working collaboratively with the business valuator. So if I gone to court, this would have blown up. We would have dueling experts saying different things about the ownership of this business. Probably would have cost $100,000 or $200,000 in legal fees. And it was a fairly novel legal issue, so it likely would have gone to the Court of Appeal as well. That was the risk of litigation. That was a blind spot I had when I was in court. I was able to identify it working cooperatively in a collaborative setting. The evaluator did end up producing multiple scenarios, if it's owned, if it's not owned, with a big range in terms of what that equalization payment was going to look like. So still a lot of money to fight over, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, depending on the scenario. But we were able to generate options and work collaboratively in this setting, even though my client had no trust initially, and come to a settlement that worked for everybody. So, these private settlement benefits really go a long way. I was overconfident. I thought my client's case was much stronger than it was. Factually, it had changed once we dove into the business. And it's just another example of how these blind spots can come up. So let's throw our poll up. What type of practice do you have? Let's see what type of collaborative practice you're running. And there are a few questions that came in. One question was, do we have a refresher program? I think, Carrie, we offered advanced tips and tricks for people who go through our program. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. If people have not taken collaborative in a while and haven't been practicing in it, one of the things they can do is register for the second half of the course. That's a great refresher. And then what we also do is we offer, and I believe we're not offering it again until the spring, is we do offer advanced collaborative training in which we teach you exactly how to get more files, kind of what Brian was talking about this morning, but we're going to teach you all sorts of other additional tips and tricks for once you start getting into your collaborative practice and you start getting into everyone. So
That's
it's a lot
the
of fun.
18 herbs and spices.
18 herbs and spices. We give it all. We're going to disclose it all. We're going to give you the secret sauce. Everybody wants the secret sauce.
All right. Well, let's see what our audience is thinking in terms of the type of practice they have. And thank you, Shannon, for helping us behind the scenes. All CP, 3%. Yeah, that's, the ones who are all in have great practices and usually are quite at peace with themselves, right? They don't have to worry about litigation and the rest of it. Hybrid, 49%, as often what we see as well. New to CP, 29%. Well, you're in the right place. You're learning lots of tips and tricks today. What is CP? 20%. Click the link in the chat box. You're going to learn all about CP and follow through with some additional training.
And you know what? If anybody has questions, if you're not sure about CP and you have questions about it and everything else, feel free to email us privately. It's not a problem. Always happy to answer any questions that anybody has about CP. I always say the more the merrier, so let's get everybody in.
Yeah, and you can. We have previous live events where we've done CP 101, CP 201, CP advanced topics with extended Q&A. Those are all recorded. They're available on our YouTube channel. You can go there and learn more about CP through the videos that we produce. We've got books, pamphlets, podcasts, lots of information out there. All right, Carrie, so we've got a couple minutes left. Case studies, we've talked about case studies throughout the program, and we have 5 of them lined up. We have dealership reports, income assessments, tax problems, and the unsilent partner. So those case studies could probably be an hour in and of itself.
They're so good.
So pick your favorite and let's get at it. And we'll get.
We got to do the unsilent partner. We've talked about the other 2. We sprinkled those in throughout everything.
I did get a notification from GoFundMe. I want to thank Connie who made a donation during this presentation. So thank you, Connie. I really appreciate your donation. Sorry, Carrie, go ahead.
We've got to do the unsilent partner. We've talked a bit about the tax problems and the legacy one. We've talked about our car dealership a bit. So the unsilent partner, the person that's not allowed at the table that really wants to be at the table with us, and them coming in and they are chirping in their 5 cents worth. We got to look after them.
Hang on. You can see why, right?
Oh, 100%.
They own this business too. Their business partners getting divorced, and they're wondering what's going to happen, right? Am I going to lose the company, my interest? So legitimately, you can see why they'd want to be part of the process.
Absolutely. And it's a difficult thing. We're relying on that business partner to agree to certain reports being sent out to us. So we've got to work with the silent partner to a degree. Obviously, they can't be a part of sitting at the table with us, but we're going to need their feedback on something. And we need the business valuator to be comfortable speaking with this person. So we have to watch this unsilent partner because we need their help. And we need to also give them some assurances along the way that, that we're not here to decimate the business. It's a big deal.
And there's good and bad, right? The unhappy unsilent partner will be a Greek chorus, potentially going to cause trouble for the CP process. And the happy unsilent partner could be an option. Can help with generation, can help with potentially buying out the business or coming up with capital for that person to buy out their spouse. So it goes both ways, right?
Absolutely. And so we want to be early on, again, when we're identifying the structure of the business. Are you a sole proprietor? Are you a corporation? Are you a partnership? We need to know that. And also, when we have somebody that's a non-family member that is a partner in a business, you need to see those partnership agreements. What do they say? Did they address anything about separation and divorce in their own partnership agreements. You need to see those agreements. You've got to ask for those. Those have got to be one of the first things that you're asking for once we know there's a family business involved. It's imperative that we know and that legal counsel understands what those documents say. It's also going to be a flag for us and say, wait a second, what's going on here? Like, do we need to call in corporate counsel for this? Do we need to get a third party involved that is actually going to help represent the unsilent partner? Is that a requirement here?
Yeah. The other, this particular case, we had a Greek course, which is really quite loud. So the husband had the business with the unsilent partner. The children were grown up. There's grandchildren. Wife was at home. They had a family cottage as well. And so the children would come by their mother's home and tell her, if you force dad to sell the cottage, you're not going to see your grandkids anymore.
Yeah.
So we had this added pressure. So we really leaned heavily on the family professional to deal with that dynamic, because it was just breaking the wife's heart, right? And so, not only did we have adult children in business, but we had adult children as a Greek course, using grandchildren as leverage to try to get an outcome. So that was a tough nut to crack, right, Carrie?
Absolutely. And you know what, though, one of the things I do remember about this matter that I thought was kind of funny in a way, because I think some of that got spurred from what happened is, I think the unsilent partner took it as an opportunity to get his business partner's children off of the gas cards and some of the benefits that they were reaping on the business that really they weren't participating in to get those benefits. And I think that was a bit of a catalyst as well for some of the responses that these children were having to what was going on, where they're saying, like, Mom, you keep doing this, then we're not going to do this, which is completely inappropriate. But everything has a domino effect. And so it's watching for those dominoes. Those kids that are having the benefit of a gas card while the business is going on, it is a good time for that business partner to be speaking up and saying, hey, I don't want this happening anymore. They're bleeding money out of the business, which is taking money out of my family's pocket. So we've always got to see, where does that ripple effect go? And that's, so it's one of the things we've got to be mindful of it. Just because we think one thing's a good idea, we've got to always take that next step and say, well, wait a minute, what does this mean next? And so how is this going to come out for this family? It was coming out as, hey, Mom, you're doing this. And that it wasn't a case of saying, hey, like, the kids, they were clearly taking sides and it wasn't helping.
Well, we had 5-6 scenarios. We got through one. And I did discuss the other one throughout the process, but let's bring Shannon back on.
Okay, so we have one more question before we log off for lunch. How do you find other professionals to help the CP team? Great question.
Well, what I would do if we're dealing with a family business, I would like to use the professionals that the company already has. So if they have a lawyer, an accountant, maybe an estate lawyer, tax lawyer, use the professionals that the family's used to dealing with, and then bring in others if you need to. But what would your recommendation be, Carrie?
I think those are great recommendations. However, sometimes we have one person that's more involved in the business than the other person. And what ends up happening is that person that's not involved will have an inherent distrust of the company accountant or that company's corporate lawyer. So it's about being aware of that. Your financial professional on your matter usually has a fairly good repertoire of people that they've used over the years, that they've built great relationships with, that understand the power of neutrality. One of the other things that is really amazing that happens within the collaborative process, when you join a practice group, so whether you're in Durham, Forth, or Toronto, wherever you may be, is we usually have a list of associate members or people that we've already vetted and trust. in these things. So they may be your business valuers, they might be a real estate agent, they may be a corporate lawyer, a tax expert, wherever that is, that's another great source. But talk to your team. We always have somebody that we've been using before that has done a great job for us. And again, it's about making sure we're getting the right fit for the right companies. Because remember, sometimes you also have US issues that show up in these files. So you want to make sure somebody knows about US law too.
Great answer. Shannon, you want to bring the golden goose into the train station?
I was going to say there's got to be some sort of runaway train pun there. Yes. I would love to. Yes, I want to thank you once again, Carrie. Thanks to all of our audience members who have been tuning in over the last couple days.
Take care, everyone. Bye now.